Hello everybody, today we are close to the sea. At least we are in the département of la Charente-Maritime, and we are going to explore a small fort which was built on the bank of the Charente River. The Charente River at this particular place was making the limit between the former provinces of La Saintonge and to the north, Launis. So we are now very close to the town of Rochefort, a town that was founded in the middle of the 17th century. And the foundation of Rochefort is the reason why Fort Lupin is now standing in front of us. If you like to understand the past importance of Rochefort, you have to trace back to the reign of Louis XIV, when the king, sadly noting the sorry condition of the French fleet, decided to create a new navy able to challenge the Dutch and above all the English navies. But since the dockyards of Toulon and Brest could not provide more battleships, it was decided to create a new dockyard, and after a while it is the place of Rochefort which was chosen among others. Of course, Rochefort had to be protected from an enemy attack, and Fort Lupin, like many others, was part of what was called in French la ceinture de feu, the fire belt, a line of incredible defenses that was extending on the neighboring shore and on the neighboring islands of Oléron and Aix. These defenses, including forts, batteries, redoubts, were particularly improved during the Napoleonic era, and eventually they were slowly abandoned after 1850 due to the progress of rifled artillery. Later, Rochefort activity declined too, mostly because the dockyards were no longer adapted to modern war shipyards. The construction of Fort Lupin was completed in 1689, and it was built according to the plans of the famous military engineer Vauban. So, from the sky, the plan of Fort Lupin is semicircular. I mean that facing the river, there was a rounded parapet with 22 embrasures from which cannons could make a grazing fire on enemy warships. There was in the middle this diagonal tower from which fire from above could be made on the decks of the enemy warships. There is also a flat wall which is facing the inland. In front of this flat wall we find a moat, quite wide, and right where we are here, it is what we call a covered way with re-entrant places of arms. These are typical elements of Vauban military architecture. One can also notice the entrance to the fort. There was a former drawbridge. The level of the water could be controlled since the presence of those locks. And something interesting is that kind of little turret in the middle of the wall. We call that a dam in French, and it was meant to avoid an enemy to reach the wall of the fort walking on top of the wall. The fort was meant for welcoming about 60 men. So inside you would find an oven, you would find 2 little barracks, you would find storage, and in the tower, in the middle, the first floor was meant for the officers and a small chapel. The ground floor you would find an armory and a gunpowder magazine, and there was a last level from which it was easier to shoot on the deck of enemy warships. I told you that Fort Lupin was built in order to defend, to protect the dockyards of Rochefort, but certainly it had another mission. It had to protect another building that I'm going to show you right now. We are now in front of this construction behind me. It is La Fontaine Royale de Lupin, the Royal Fountain of Lupin. This one dates back to 1763, but it has replaced a former fountain dating back to 1676. Here, the new battleships that were built in Rochefort would make a stop in order to take some drinking water. So why not to take drinking water in Rochefort? I'm going to explain you. Actually, it was a little complex. Because if Rochefort was, strategically speaking, a very good place to build a dockyard, because it was nestled in a meander of the Charente River, 20 kilometers far from the sea, easily defendable. Also from the surroundings, from the ground, because it was surrounded by swamps. But the big problem was the river Charente itself, which was too shallow, only 6 meters deep in Rochefort. Actually, a big warship could not leave Rochefort towards the sea entirely equipped. So what happened? It was working step by step. First, the hull and the masts and the riggings were built, installed in Rochefort, but nothing else. Then the new warship was kind of towed by men along the banks of the river until the fountain, when it was loading drinking water. Then after, next village, which is Port des Barques, there the crew and the provisions were loaded on the boat. And then only after reaching the harbor, when the water was deeper, the most important, the cannons were installed in the warship under the protection of the forts of Oléron and Aix Islands. Under the protection, more or less, because we know that in 1757 the English Navy literally smashed, entirely destroyed the fort of Aix. In addition, in 1809 there was a kind of battle between a French and an English squadrons right in the harbor, when the English used kind of fire ships that they literally launched on the French squadron, which was entirely destroyed. This is to explain you that even after this period of trouble, this area continued to be fortified with new batteries and redoubts, etc. Nevertheless, there were other fortifications built much recently. I speak of the Second World War, when the Germans built a series of blockhouses along the shore that were included in what was called the Mur de l'Atlantique, the Atlantic Wall. But it's another story.